Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Philly Factor. My name is Paul Perrello, and we have a very interesting guest who joins us on this edition of our program. At the age of 22, kiddingly, I said to Christopher Hall just a moment ago that at the age of 22, he has done more than most people my age have even done. Christopher Hall is a photographer. He is, I don't know if he's still a student. Are you still a student at the Maryland Institute College of Arts, or did you graduate, Christopher?
Yes, I'm in my last semester right now.
Okay. More importantly, not only is he a student, not only is he a photographer, he has a new book out, Abandoned Philadelphia, The Birthplace of America. And if you go to his website, and we'll put that information up on the screen, you will be amazed at some of the artwork. And I call it artwork because it's more than photography. You will be amazed at some of the images that Christopher has taken, not only here in the greater Philadelphia area, but really around this great country of ours. So, Christopher, thanks for being with us. Congratulations on the book. And where do you find the time to do all this and still go to school?
Thank you. I spend my free time. Some people have hobbies of maybe like, I don't know. My free time I spend going to these abandoned places. Every moment I can go, I'm traveling. Every day off I have from work, I am going to some new town where if you're passionate about something, I feel like you can find time to do it. And whenever I can find time, that's where I'm at doing. It's what makes me happy. It's something I'm really passionate about. And it's something I've been doing for almost 5 years now. And I've been doing photography since I was 12, but at the age of 16, I got into exploring these abandoned spaces, and it kind of just became an addiction. One place led to another, down to a rabbit hole of other abandoned places, and they're all connected in some way. And next thing you know, you've been to quite a few in a couple of years in a short period of time.
The furthest that you've traveled on this hobby of yours, I mean, where's the furthest location you've gone?
I've covered most of the East Coast. I would say probably farthest I've gone was New Orleans, Alabama, that kind of region down there. I haven't gone across country yet. I haven't been to California or anywhere over there yet. Hoping to change that this summer. Hoping to be able to go overseas and expand my portfolio. But at the moment, I've done most of the East Coast as far as traveling.
Your book, Abandoned Philadelphia, The Birthplace of America. Is this your first book?
This is my third. I actually did two other ones before this about Baltimore. I have them right here. I did Abandoned North Side and South Side. And
Okay.
these were kind of my first book ever. I was 18 when I was contacted by Font Hill Media and Arcadia Publishing to do these. And I was a little nervous at first. I wasn't really sure like how to go about writing a book at 18, but I figured I'd go on it, take the opportunity. I spent months at that time going to Baltimore. At the time, I lived in Southern Maryland, which is about an hour away from the city. And every weekend I was there photographing different places and learning about the history, talking to people. And it kind of went from there. I had the first two come out in Baltimore, and then they contacted me to do one for Philadelphia, which is one of my personal favorite cities to travel and photograph. And I was super excited to have that opportunity. And here we are now.
Philadelphia, yes, the birthplace of America. And there are so many great places that we know as tourist attractions. And then there are those places that once served a purpose in Philadelphia that have become tourist attractions, like Eastern State Penitentiary, and there are a few others. But when we talk about abandoned Philadelphia, oftentimes we just think of those buildings that sit off in the distance and have become nothing but shells of their former selves. But yet, at least two come to my mind: Byberry State Hospital and Pennhurst out in suburban Philadelphia. They have become sort of like Halloween attractions, be it positive or negative. I mean, these are, they are part of the history of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, and have been turned into tourist attractions, just like Eastern State for that matter. But then there are these off the beaten path types of places that you have included in your book. how do you get access to these places? I mean, is it possible just to push open the gate and walk inside, or do you need permission, or do you forget about the permission and go in and snap away?
I mean, I think it's very important that to know that not all these places are safe, and going to them, there's concerns with asbestos and trespassing for sure. Homeless who live in these places. When permission is available, I that is my first go-to. I enjoy talking to the owners and going about it the right way, but also there's just the benefit of the doubt. You can always take a picture and ask for forgiveness later, leave nothing but footprints. I'm personally always super respectful to the places I go. While I've had the opportunity to get permission for a lot of places, some of these have become these underground tourist attractions where there is just an open door and people kind of just look to the wayside of keeping them locked down. And then through that, I've just always kind of wandered my way in there, as curiosity of one who sees these places sometimes has.
Do you, and I should mention here that we're doing this show virtually, and in the
Mhm.
best case scenario, we would have had Chris in studio with us. And I suspect he was very eager to drive up from Baltimore to be with us on the program, because I suspect he was going to use that as an opportunity to scope out some sites
Oh
that
yeah,
maybe he didn't get a chance
definitely. Definitely. It's
to
been a
get to.
while since I've
Yeah.
been up there.
But I mean, even us Philadelphians, we walk past a building that
Mhm.
may be abandoned, or it might be vacant, it might be locked up, or whatever. I mean, what catches your eye about these buildings that you say, this is a place that I think I want to get inside and look at?
I've always had an interest in history growing up. Some the story about different places, where they come, how they were, and what they have become. And I look at, say, the Delaware River Power Station that's currently being renovated down in Fishtown. That place, you see driving into Philadelphia, you see it on the highway. It's a big statement of the city along the water. And currently they are renovating it, which I'm really excited for. But at the time, I remember driving to the city, seeing those huge smokestacks covered in graffiti, and this building that once served a purpose to power much of the city. And um, who wouldn't want to know? Well, maybe some people don't, but me personally, I wanted to know what was inside. I guess that's just the inner explorer adventure sense that I've always had. But seeing that, and then even like of churches, the architecture within that, growing up going to church and things, seeing that closed down as just something that's always struck an interest to me. I don't know.
Mhm.
I find it interesting.
Yeah, and there are a number of churches in Philadelphia that have been shut
Mhm.
down, regardless of religious denomination, but they served as houses of worship for decades,
Mhm.
if not 50, 60, hundreds of years. Philadelphia being one of the oldest cities on East Coast of the United States, but many of them are just I don't want to say abandoned, but they're just shackled. The gates are shackled; you can't get in, or perhaps you can get in, but um, in looking at some of your photographs online, and there were some startling photos that you took of St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
A hospital that has been closed now for a number of years. There was a new St. Elizabeth's, but
Mhm.
it looked like they just, one day went in and shut off the lights and left everything that was there, and it's sort of still there, including, blood on, gurneys in the hospital,
Mhm.
and a patient or a doctor's watch that is smashed on the ground there. I mean, it's amazing that these things still exist like that.
It blows my mind, honestly. And that's the case with many state hospitals. State hospitals are kind of my one of my more favorite places to go to, because often cases when they did shut down, they really did just lock the doors and walk away. Norristown State Hospital outside of Philadelphia is the same case, where it is still partially active, but many of the buildings they just kind of threw everything into and called it a day. And now they sit with these patient stories, these histories of medical treatments just being discarded and forgotten. And it's something that when I'm going to these places and I get to uncover and read old patient files and read old documents of what these people's lives were in these buildings, and then the realities of what their lives actually were. And yeah, St. Elizabeth's was one of the first abandoned hospitals I ever went to, and it still remains as one of my favorites.
Hmm.
Currently, it looks like they've started a lot more construction of renovating the buildings. But back then, it was crazy the stuff that I found inside, old blood samples and things like that. And the same is true for many abandoned places. Often they close because of lack of funding, budgeting, or just some scandal or something, and they just have to lock up and walk away. And then with that becomes this like almost installment of time of when it closed, and then it just sits there for years or decades before someone like me goes in and uncovers it and gets
Sure.
to document it.
Um, let's talk about some of the buildings that you've wandered into in Philadelphia. What was, let's say, the most eye-opening? Here, I'm asking a photographer about something that's eye-opening because their eyes are always open, looking for the next subject of their photograph. But what was one of the most startling finds that you found here in Philadelphia?
Startling finds probably would be right around Temple University. It's demolished now. There used to be a funeral home that I went to, and exploring it was weird. It had been closed not many years ago. It closed due to a huge scandal, and they did lock up the doors in this funeral home and leave everything, including the cremated remains of many individuals. And I remember walking into this back closet and then seeing these boxes sitting there of people who had been just forgotten about and left there as this place crumbled around it. And that was probably the most startling thing I had personally ever seen. It was just sad to see like the value of human life and put into this building and just thrown in a closet essentially. Thankfully that was reported and the bodies were removed, but seeing that at that time, it did not sit right.
Yeah.
It was,
Which leads me then to, I mean, here you are, you're there as an observer, you're there as a photographer, but do you feel conflicted or do you feel compelled to report what you found because you're there, for a purpose, and it's to take photographs and to tell a story, but also there's a human element in all this because you've made a gruesome find that sort of feel like, I mean, do you feel like you need to take this to the next level and tell somebody about it?
I feel so personally. I think if you just had left that there, no, those people would have been left forever. And there's always that human aspect. And if something like that, if I ever came across, which I have come across a couple of times, and I always do, I personally like to take the steps to let that be known and make sure the right thing is done. But I know others may not have that same thing, but
Sure.
me personally, I believe it's very important to do that, especially when you're going into these places that others probably aren't.
Yeah. You also have a tale to tell about the Blue Horizon boxing ring. Tell us about that.
Oh, yes. So this was 2016, my very first trip to Philadelphia. I had found a few places looking online that were abandoned, and one of them being the Delaware River Power Station, old church, and then this Blue Horizon boxing ring. And we went to it, heard about it, didn't know really anything about it other than that they filmed Rocky V there, a little scene from there, and that had been this renowned boxing ring in Philadelphia for many years and closed in 2010, I believe. So we're going around trying to find a way in, trying to look through a window just so we could see the boxing ring. And we see a little number written on the door, and call the phone number as a last resort, and someone answers, and there's a guy named Thomas living in this abandoned boxing ring. older man, looks kind of homeless. We weren't sure if he was like the caretaker really ever or the actual just kind of squatting it out there. But he
Mhm.
had taken it upon himself to protect the boxing ring. And at that time, he let my friends and I in, and we asked if we could take pictures of it. And he like thought about it for a second and was like, sure. It'll be like the $20 for 30 minutes a person. So we pay this guy who we find in this abandoned building $20 for 30 minutes, and he turns the power on for this boxing ring. And he comes back at exactly 30 minutes, collects us. But going to this boxing ring, he himself had taken precautions of setting up chairs against certain doors, putting cans up so people wouldn't, if people tried to access it without his permission, he would hear them.
Mm.
Um, I remember wandering around and finding an old mattress in an office, and that kind of looked like where he was sleeping. And this guy kind of became almost like a legend of the place. The Blue Horizon boxing ring got really popular of other photographers wanting to see it. And Thomas was the guy to go to at that point. I remember visiting him. The building's getting redeveloped currently, but right before construction had started, I decided to go back and see him one more time. Because I had heard that the construction people were trying to kick him out, and he was moving chairs in front of all the main doors so they couldn't get construction people in there, surveyors, and it was this whole thing. So I remember visiting Thomas again for the last time, and he said, I don't get it why you photographers want to come photograph this boxing ring, but I've made thousands of dollars from you guys. So thank you. And I'll never forget Thomas, and I'm not sure if he's there anymore, but I'm pretty sure they kicked him out. And I actually dedicated my book to him. I don't know where he is now. Maybe he's in another abandoned building charging people money, or maybe he's gone somewhere else. And I don't know, wherever Thomas is, my book is dedicated to him.
Wow.
But
Wow.
he was this protector of this abandoned place. He took it upon himself, and he ultimately, redevelopers took it over and bought it out. But it was inspiring to see this guy who had this small connection to this building, would not let it go. He wanted it to remain a boxing ring and a place for people to see, and it was just really inspiring. And that
Yeah.
was the story of Thomas and the Blue Horizon boxing ring.
Wow. That's a very interesting story for sure. And there are so many stories out there just waiting to be explored, and you've explored many of these places in your book. Many, I mentioned at the outset of the program about some of these buildings that have been abandoned have been sort of resurrected as tourist attractions,
Mm-hmm.
namely Eastern State, Pennsylvania, which I'm not sure if you ever toured, but it is,
Mm-hmm.
I remember early on, it was basically a Halloween attraction. It opened
Yeah.
for a very small season of business, but now it has almost become like a 365, 24/7 operation. What do you feel about these abandoned buildings that have managed to dodge the wrecking ball and have sort of been repurposed as tourist attractions, for lack of a better word?
I feel like it's good that they've avoided the wrecking ball. As far as what they've become, I think it's great that maybe starting somewhere, if it's a haunted house and that brings people in and they can see this place, and maybe it is only portrayed as being this creepy haunted prison, but it still brings an awareness that the building exists and that it can be worked towards something like what it is today, that talks about the history, who was there, why it was there, and what was significant about it. Um, I think it's a great start. I personally, in my work, I'm not too into the haunted, creepy aspect of it. Like it's cool and all, and a lot of people get a lot of appreciation out of that. Me personally, I'm more into the history and story behind the places, but I think it's awesome to see that these places are at least attempting to be reused, and sometimes it becomes successful, like Eastern State Penitentiary. I went there for the first time about a year ago, and it was pretty cool to see how many people actually go there every day to
Sure.
learn about the history of prison systems and the importance of the preservation of that structure.
Sure. Well, this is that proverbial what came first, the chicken or the egg question. I mean, do you stumble upon a building and go in first, or do you do your homework and say, that's a place I want to go into and see? So where I'm getting at is, do you go into a city and look at, maps and or on your phone, look at maps and say, I want to visit here, here, and here, and then do the research about what these buildings were at one time, or is the other way around, that you stumbled upon a building and then say, gee, this is interesting, and then you start to research the building?
I would say it's a mixture of both. Oftentimes, when I'm planning a trip, I'll do my research. I'll go on Google Maps, search a little town, and then kind of go from there. It's kind of like writing a research paper almost. You're looking for your general area, then you dive deep into the more specifics. Am I looking for closed schools, hospitals, churches, industry buildings? So oftentimes, if you find one abandoned place, you're gonna see another one driving by. And it's usually a mixture of both. I'll have a couple places that I want to go to, and then usually that ends up to a couple more than that, just from driving around, scouting different areas. And you never know what you're going to find, but you also, there's some places that often find themselves through news articles and research and things like that.
Sure. Given this revolution, this digital age that we live in today, and everybody's got an iPhone or some type of
Mhm.
phone with a camera attached to it. So are you shooting these locations with the good old fashioned, 35 millimeter with the 6 foot lens, or are you using your iPhone or Galaxy or whatever in taking these pictures?
At first, I was using my digital camera. I use a Sony A7R2 and a wide angle lens. But more recent, in the past recent years, I've gotten into film, shooting the larger medium format 120 with a Pentax 6x7, and then even larger with 4x5 cameras, which it becomes a lot to bring into these places. But I really enjoy the craft of making the photograph, and there's something about shooting film that I've always been drawn to versus the digital. But I'll always shoot digital first because we are in that modern era. But when I have the time, shooting film is something I also personally enjoy when it comes to documenting these places.
So for whether you're an amateur or a professional, what type of recommendation do you make to a person in terms of capturing that photo? Because everybody thinks they're, especially as I said, this digital age that we live in
Yeah.
today, everybody's taking a picture of something. And all you have to do is go look online and say, what is all this stuff? But I mean, what type of advice? I mean, do you? I mean, people will say, well, I'm going to take a landscape photo and take the picture of the entire thing, where they may be overlooking the obvious by zooming in on a certain area or a certain spot. So, what type of advice do you give people who are looking to take a photo and they want to capture an image?
I would say get out there with whatever you have to start out with. If it's that phone in your pocket and you want to go take a picture, then you should go take a picture with that phone. And if it's something you enjoy taking a picture of, then do it. I feel like a lot of people might try to say, oh, you have to have this and this and that. But even when I first started out with photography, all I had was my old phone and a little point and shoot camera. And from that, I got more into it, buying better equipment and things like that. But you don't really need the better equipment, I'd say, as long as you have a phone and you can take pictures on it, then you're good to go. Um, People have their different perspectives, and of course, if they want to get into it at a more professional level, there's different things. But just starting out, I would say just go at it and do whatever makes you happy and whatever you can get your hands on. Starting out with that's the best.
We just have a few minutes left in the program, and
Mhm.
we can go on for hours here. But when you decide these are the pictures that I want to include in my book, I'm sure there are many pictures that are pushed to the side because they can't. There's just not enough room.
Hmm.
So might you come back to Philadelphia and do book two or book three, or might you set your sights on South Jersey or Delaware or some other city?
I'd love to do whatever opportunity comes my way. I'm grateful that I was able to do one book for Philadelphia. It's such a big city and so many people, I hope are going to be able to see this one day. But currently looking forward into the future, I keep my eyes open. I don't really like to lock myself down to anything. If something comes my way, I have been in Jersey a lot lately, documenting different places around the city and stuff around Camden and areas like that. But I don't really know. Wherever gets put out there, and I'm for it. At 22, I'm grateful for what I've had, and whatever comes my way in the future is what I'm happy to go ahead and.
If you want to go to Camden, you got to get to the Board of Education building, and the upper floors of that building
Mhm,
are the all old RCA studios that have been abandoned.
mhm.
And from my understanding, and I think people have not been there in a very, very long time, but the studios were just up and left when RCA pulled out
Yeah.
of the city. And some of the greats have actually recorded there on the upper floors of this building in
Mhm.
downtown Camden. And again, people are walking by every day. They see the sign outside the building, Board of Education, but they really don't know what went on in the upper floors of that building.
I think that's one of my favorite things about going to these places is many times we just walk by them, but say you do a Google search and you find out what it once was and what is still there, and you'd be surprised, as you're saying, there's those floors above in that Board of Education building. There's many cases where it's like that. And that's kind of my most exciting thing, going to these places is finding the what has been forgotten.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I want to thank you very much. Congratulations on the book, Abandoned
Thank you.
Philadelphia, The Birthplace of America. Continued success. And I look forward to having you back on the program sometime in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. My name is Paul Perrello. Thanks so much for being with us on this edition of the Philly Factor. Again, the name of the book, Abandoned Philadelphia, The Birthplace of America. Till next time, have a great day. We'll see you next time on the Philly Factor.